Hi, this is Kara from the Special Needs Mom podcast.
And this is Angela from Especially Organized, Sensible Solutions for Special Needs Moms.
We have this heart for special needs moms. And so we thought, you know what, let's combine forces. And we have come up with what we're calling the Purge Party. And you can pretty much guess what it is. It's a party where we're going to come together and we're going to purge or, in general, accomplish a goal, a small goal together. So we have set this for January 27th, starting at 8 o'clock for my Pacific Coast people,
which means 11 o'clock for all of you on the East Coast. So this is an opportunity. If you have something on your to-do list that has just been stuck there and you are wanting to move it up on the list, you're wanting to tackle, maybe it's a space or an area of your home or a category in your home that has just needed a little time and attention. This is your opportunity for you to be online with us while you work and have access for us to help you answer your questions, help guide you, and just serve you for those 2 hours.
Yeah, exactly. And I think you can tell like what we've designed is just this very high level of support for that project that you just haven't been able to tackle on your own. The thing that we are envisioning is that you get to leave this purge party feeling so accomplished because you did the thing. You started the year off getting that thing done that you were stuck on last year. And so it's a momentum builder, if you will. You can go ahead and sign up. We have a link ready for you. And we are offering this for $40 for the whole experience.
Absolutely. And we hope you'll join us. I think it's going to be really fun. It's going to be a great group of moms of special needs kids. So we all get each other. We all have an understanding of what it's like to have something on our to-do list, but just we haven't been able to tackle it yet. So I hope that you will join us. We're super excited to bring this to you, and we are thrilled to work with you.
All right. We'll see you all there. Hi, I'm Kara, life coach, wife, and mom to 4 incredible and unique children. It wasn't all that long ago that my son received a diagnosis that had my world come crashing down. I lacked the ability to see past the circumstances, which felt impossible, and the dreams I once had for my life and family felt destroyed. Fast forward past many years of surviving and not at all thriving, and you'll see a mom who trusts that she can handle anything that comes her way and has access to the power and confidence that once felt so lacking. I created the Special Needs Mom podcast to create connection and community with moms who find themselves feeling trapped and with no one who really understands. My intention is to spark the flare of possibility in your own life and rekindle your ability to dream. This isn't a podcast about your special needs child. This is a podcast about you. If you are a mom who feels anxious, alone, or stuck, then you are in the right place. Welcome. Well, hello, and welcome back to the Special Needs Mom podcast. Just a few moments ago, I ended the conversation on Zoom with my friend, Katie Taylor. And I mean, you'll hear it in the episode, but I think it's pretty obvious that we both really love each other. There's a lot of mutual admiration. Katie is a child life specialist. Some of you are going to be very well acquainted to what that is, and some of you will be like, wait, what's that? And we're going to go into it in the episodes, so don't worry, you'll be fully informed. And it's funny, Katie is equal parts brain and heart. And also, I'm going to just say it, she's a world changer. I think she saw a need in her industry, in the child life industry, and she is working diligently to close it. She saw the gap and she's closing it. And so I really admire that she's setting out to do something that nobody has done before, and she's succeeding. She is bringing her skills and expertise and collaborating with countless others to bring what she has to offer into the hospital to support families like ours. There's something about her as not a special needs mom, but as somebody who is willingly choosing to be at our bedside to support us as we support our children in some of the hardest moments. Most of us as parents, we didn't choose to be where we are, and she chooses it. And I really admire that. So listen to this episode, and we're going to talk kind of about a lot of things, but specifically talking about what she would have to offer us as moms from her vantage point. I think it just gives us some clues as to what we might want to work on as moms, not because we're doing anything wrong, but because we as humans always have opportunities to learn and grow and show up in ways that just feel better for us. So let's get into this conversation. Welcome, Katie Taylor. Katie, this conversation has been a long time coming. We're just all smiles over here. I'm so excited to finally have you as a guest on this podcast. Welcome to the Special Needs Mom podcast.
Thank you for having me. We've been friends for a while now on the interwebs, and I'm just so happy to be here with your audience and your voice and your face. So happy.
I know. I feel so good right now. And I want you to know, and I want everyone, all the listeners to know that you are one of those people that I'm like, wow, I feel like I have benefited so much from knowing you, both just as like a fellow entrepreneur and mom, but also really like because of your expertise of what you share in your role as a child life specialist. So thank you so much.
I didn't know you were going to say that. Makes me cry. Thank you so much. I feel the same way about you and Jess and Madeline and all of the moms that I get to be in the little podcast world with. And I feel the same about you and your family. I constantly get so much from what you offer, what you bring to the world, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I could continue this little love fest forever. Let's tell people a little bit more about who you are. So let's just hear a little bit about you as a person, you as a mom. And then, of course, I want to hear about what you are dedicating your professional life to right now.
Yes. Well, I am Katie Taylor. I am a mom of two. I have a 5 and an 8-year-old in Austin, Texas, where it's so friggin' hot. I am married to my husband, Preston. It's so fun. I never get asked these questions. I'm always the asker, so it's really fun to answer it. I am married to Preston. We met working in the hospital together, which was kind of fun. We were both Texans going through divorces. So we were working in a hospital outside of DC. So super random, but he was like this country boy who was so well loved by hospital staff and got my job. And like, that is just so attractive to me when there's a clinician that's like, I see value in what you do and I'm going to let you do your thing, like automatic win.
He had you from there.
He had me from like, do you want to go back first? You know, like, what do you want to do with the kid? It's up to you. I remember one time I asked him, I was like, what do you think I do? And he was like, all I know is you make my job way easier. And I was like,
wow,
we may date. And so, yeah, for that, I've been a child life specialist for over 13 years now and have worked clinically up until October of 2021, where I left the bedside after, just our classic burnout from the pandemic and being in a really hard working situation to pursuing child life on call full time, which is what I do now. And our goal is to make every parent feel so empowered in the healthcare setting that it ultimately improves outcomes for their child and other families too.
Yeah. Well, I think that's one of the reasons that I'm so connected to the work that you do is because, again, I have benefited from it so much, not just with Levi, who has all the things, but with my other kids as well. Like they don't give us a manual for these kids. And even just something as simple as getting a vaccination, or actually my daughter had to get a blood draw. And so I only knew because I knew you that I was like, okay, let's look up all the videos about kids going to the lab and doing all the things. And like, it just felt so great to feel like I wasn't just going to have to go and like strap my daughter down and like torture her and traumatize her. So our kids have to go through a lot of things, a lot of really hard things. And I think you are somebody that helps us make it a little bit better.
Thank you.
I want to talk more about Child Life on Call, maybe at the end, because I want everybody to know the resources that you offer. But before we go there, I actually want to make sure everybody's on the same page with what Child Life is. So why don't you explain it? Because you'll obviously do a much better job than myself.
Well, I always like to say, if you don't know what Child Life is, that is totally fine. Our title itself doesn't do the best job at explaining what we do, but we are basically child development experts in psychosocial care and trauma-informed care. So we really look at the family from a child development lens in the family system and what are the best ways we can equip and support this family to get through this complex experience? It really started actually as a group of lady volunteers in the hospital, like play ladies, many decades ago, and has really formed into this really essential component of the care team where we're holistically looking at the family as a whole and how they're coping, how they're understanding. And so that's kind of the first part. The second part is where we understand the medical stuff, and that's all we learn clinically during our internships. So we all have undergraduate or graduate degrees in child life or a related field. You then go through a 600-hour unpaid internship where you're under we can talk about that too, but an unpaid internship under a child life specialist. Then you have to sit for your certification exam, pass that, and then, you maintain it every 5 years. So that's really how you become a child life specialist and stay in the field. So we don't get trained to be like oncology specific or trained to be radiology specific. We really possess the skills to transfer in and out of the hospital, acute, chronic, complex, traumatic care.
I've had the experience of working with child life in OR, in the PICU, I guess it would still be the ER with all different kids. And so I've gotten to see the variety of experiences. Random question, but I guess I'm like, I have a little beef because if I didn't know to ask for child life in a lot of those circumstances, I would not have gotten the benefit of child life.
Yeah.
What is happening? Why is this?
This is my,
I'm sure this is not your favorite thing either.
No, this is my pedestal of why Child Life on Call is out there to really spread the awareness. You can ask, you can advocate. We are not a profession that was set up in like a typical nursing ratio of 1 to 3 to 4 to 5, where you have one patient. We're set up of a ratio of anywhere from 1 to 15 or 1 to 30 based on the care that you're in. However, we also have non-clinical responsibilities. We chart, we sit on committees, we accept donations, we run the playroom, we run activities, we teach outside of the hospital, we work with siblings. So it's really unfortunate that families don't get access to child life, which is really what we're trying to do now. But you can ask for it, you can advocate for it. And ultimately, what we want to do is just empower you, the family, so much that you continue to know the skills that you have the next time you go in, but you can always call on us if you need us.
Nice. So I'm glad that you are closing the gap. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, is so that parents that perhaps don't know that this resource exists now know, both in terms of the resources that we'll talk about that you specifically offer and what they can ask for at their place of care. All right. One of the things that I really wanted to get your input on, because you have a very, in my opinion, unique vantage point. You're this unbiased third party. You're not the medical provider. You're not the parent. You're not the child. And you're witnessing parents in what I consider probably some of the most difficult moments of their life. And so you're seeing what's happening for children and what's happening for parents. And I want to focus on what you get to see in terms of parents and maybe even specifically mothers. And in not any way to criticize any parent in those moments, because clearly everybody's doing the best they can. But the reason I want to talk about this is because if we're not aware, then we really have no choice over things. And I want to create some awareness for us parents as we predictably will be in more moments that are difficult. And I want to be able to kind of do the work now to be able to prepare for those moments so that we can show up the best we can for our parents. So that's a long lead up to the question of what are the more common challenges or pitfalls that you see parents make? And what do you recommend for them in those moments when they're trying to help their child through what would be a really hard moment?
A good and thoughtful question. One thing that kind of comes to mind is that it just takes so much work. I know what I'm about to say is to do the work on your own previous medical experiences, whether it be with yourself during your birth, with your child, so that whatever scenario you're walking into, you're not bringing in that, I don't want to say baggage because it is baggage, but you're coming in with a clear eyes to this medical team, to this scenario right here, because it's all different than what you had been through before. Very simply, like I see it a lot where parents are like, I have horrible veins. It takes them forever to draw my blood. So I'm sure it'll take forever on my child. And right out the gate, like when I hear a parent say that, I know they have some unprocessed, situation that they have gone through. And, we like to joke, well, veins aren't genetic, so that's a good thing. We're going to take a look. But at the same time, I sometimes ask parents, well, tell me about what you went through. And that kind of opens up the doors for them to be able to explain, like, well, this is what happened to me. And sometimes even that's just helpful, this 2 to 3 minute conversation about what had gone through. And then we can kind of pick up and put ourselves back in the scenario now. I feel so great to always work around a care team that I'm like, you want this nurse to draw your blood? We're going to get her in here. She's going to be the best one, and to pump her up and to pump you and your child up, that this experience can and will be different than what you went through.
Oh gosh, there's so much value in that. And I'm going to kind of take a little segue to illustrate something from the coaching perspective, because then I'm going to use myself as a personal example and kind of make fun of myself for a second. So the coaching words I would use to describe what you've explained is what I would call an incompletion, right? Where something happened and you're still experiencing the impact of it because you're still actually living in, like, so the vein example is a great one where that parent didn't process it. And of course they didn't, right? Like
Right.
they're human. Yeah. And they unknowingly or subconsciously bring it into the now. And to your point, there's so much value in noticing, oh, wow, this thing from the past is coming up now. Maybe that's not as helpful as I thought it would be. And how I'm going to make fun of myself is, so we just started the school year and Levi started high school. And of course, I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about this. And his team seems really great. What I am noticing when things are going well, I'm constantly wanting to refer how bad it was last year, or like talk about how bad it was last year. And what I'm noticing is, oh, interesting, right? You're not at the place where you're actually letting last year be last year. Like, I'm bringing last year into this year. And so my work is to do what I would call some completion work. And I have a lot of different tools for that. That's not this show, but it's just something to notice, like, oh, wow, like I'm bringing a lot to this space that's perhaps not helpful. And I'd say in my situation, it's certainly not helpful for me to look through the lens of all the trauma that happened last year. And I'm using that word for what happened last year, noticing my response. I'm like, wow, I'm realizing how bad it was.
Yeah.
And so again, see, actually, what's funny is I'm doing it now. I'm like, I need to talk more about it. So I'll go do that work. But going back to kind of what you're suggesting is really noticing any of our medical experiences that we might be bringing into this space. And I'm going to guess now that it's going to go for a lot of us, not just our own personal medical experiences, but our medical witnessing experiences for our children, because a lot of us have seen things that no parent should see. I know for myself, like I should have definitely been invited out of the room for several different situations. And in my opinion, I was not, because they were short-staffed. And that's not okay, right? So I need to actually do the work so that I don't bring that trauma into the next. Anything to add on that as we move on to any other areas that you see are the pitfalls?
I love your perspective there, because like you said, it's just like noticing rather than saying it out loud until it really serves you. So here's the thing, like maybe your vein rolling is going to serve you in this circumstance when the nurse says it to your child, like, oh, your veins roll. And you could say, hey, buddy, mine do those too. Right. And that's actually really positive because you've got that connection going. But like you said, just being aware, noticing it, and it's so hard to do and it's going to take so much practice. But there is a place for you to close up or acknowledge or honor what you had gone through, and that it can trickle down to your son. Because then for kids, we just get into this whole complex of, well, what does rolling mean? Well, did I do something wrong? Well, so it's just sometimes if you want to bring it, think about, how can I bring this to serve us? I can bring it to serve us as a connection between me and my child versus something that could put something out there that doesn't need to be there.
That's such a great example of actually how same information used in a different way can actually be very, very powerful in bonding.
Right.
It's really interesting. What are the other situations or pitfalls that you see that you think as parents would benefit from noticing?
I think there is, and I'm so guilty of it too, this fear around not wanting to get upset or cry in front of your child, especially when you know that they're already upset, they're already handling things. And I totally get that. And I think that there is a line where if you feel like your child is going to be consoling you, that's probably too much.
I remember you saying this before. Keep going.
But your child seeing you act very honestly and authentically for something that's difficult is actually incredibly valuable for them to then feel like they can then show that same emotion. So I think when things are hard, especially in the hospital, is not the time to really be closed off to having emotions in front of your child, but to just be verbal about them, saying, Mommy's crying because I feel this or that. I'm going to take a few deep breaths, just naming what you're going through so that your child can watch you through this transformation. We know that modeling is the most important thing you can do in, sharing with your kid what you're going through and how they can go through it as well.
Yeah. Wow. I'm so connected to why this is so important because I can see all the potential pitfalls of or what it could create in the space if we don't actually allow that authenticity. And I'm deeply connected to how hard that is because as a parent, as a mom surviving this horrific experience, our default, I think, is to soldier up and to be strong and just to get ourselves through it.
Yeah.
So then to be able to have the capacity of showing that emotion, which is vulnerable, when we're already in such a vulnerable space, what I want us to consider is that this one just might take some practice.
Totally.
Because I'm actually I've had a lot of opportunities to practice, but we can kind of discard half of them because it didn't have any of the skills I needed to actually even feel my feelings. So those didn't count. And so I've been on this journey a while and I can still say, wow, that is a high level of being able to process your emotions in a way that you can then articulate them and go into that vulnerability in that moment. But I guess I really want to highlight it because it feels so important.
I think that's so true. It's way easier to practice in actually your child. So when you see your child go through something, to name their emotions because you're not doing it to yourself. Those are way harder to do and admit. You're exactly right. That is total high level. It's a good starting point. I see you doing this. I see you taking deep breaths. I see you doing this coping skill and really building from that. And, I've noticed if my son does something that is him moving from one emotion to another, I try to name it out loud. And I'm like, do you remember when mommy did that? I didn't do it as well as you just did it, but it's this conversation about feelings that's authentic and happening in the moment. But I get what you're saying. You're in fight or flight mode. You have to be strong. And sometimes you don't want to break in front of your kid because you want to do it privately in the shower or with someone else that you love. And that is okay too. All of this is accepted. It's just consider that maybe these tears are not always having to be hidden when things are hard.
Yeah, I think exactly. We can start small with this, I think is what you're saying. I was like, why do you think it's so hard to cry in front of doctors and nurses? I feel like I always don't want them to see my humanity. That's kind of weird, right?
Not at all. I get it. I would love for you to cry in front of your nurses and doctors because it humanizes you and then it humanizes them. And I think that connection just gets stronger. I don't know how to put it. When a parent is crying to me or crying to a provider, and we're not talking about the sobbing in the hallway, but just these real emotions, it takes everybody's guard down. And that's where I feel like the real trust is built between you and the person that is caring for the most important thing in your life. Otherwise, it's just kind of treatment to patient. And we need more than that from these people that are caring for our loved ones.
Okay, ladies, we got to show ourselves, I think is the takeaway here.
Easier said than done. Okay.
I know. Okay, again, reiterating the point is that these are just things to start noticing, right? If we notice ourselves really holding back and hiding and kind of really avoiding, like just notice, oh, interesting. I am really holding back from being my authentic self right now, where I'm trying to look strong so this doctor or nurse or whatever, but just noticing stuff is a good start. Anything else come up when we think about things that you observe that awareness might, again, be helpful?
I think you probably touch on this a lot, but just that you deserve as much as you need when you're in, my context is the healthcare or medical setting. And that's breaks. And that's to say, no, please don't come in the room right now. That's to say, I want to be present for rounds, but I have to pee first. Like that is you needing to show up how you need to show up and asking for what you need.
Mm-hmm.
And my analogy is always like, we're more willing to ask for a different coach for the Suns baseball team or for them to get played on third base to first base than we are to talk or ask for anything when it comes to talking with doctors. And that's because we feel like they've been through all the school and they know best, but you know yourself best and you have to have your best self as much as it can be, show up to these conversations. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that starts with asking for what you need and is usually met with not eye rolls or ugh or anything like it's usually met with like, I need you to show up too, because we need your help with this.
Mm-hmm. What I'm noticing more is the nurses being totally on board with that and them seeing what I'll just call some gaps in the current medical system. Our hospital in particular, there's some opportunities for improvement. And I see the nurses really advocating because they're seeing the impact of, like, just for instance, like not really making sure that the parent is present for rounds and not making it easy for a parent to be present for rounds, because that happened to us less hospitalization. And the nurse was like more upset about it than I was. I mean, I was upset about it, but like they get it, so using them as your allies.
Totally.
Yeah. In your work and in mine, both in being a parent and also, what I do in supporting moms in this space, there's a lot of giving of our emotional capacity, right? So for you to witness children and mothers and of course fathers in these moments, and just to hear stories and experiences where they are hard, right? Not every story here has a happy ending. So the language I use for this is really being able to hold space for what you're being with. So for you, when you're with a family or when you were with a family at bedside, you have to be able to be in an emotional space where you can sponge in whatever it is that you're experiencing. Same thing for us mothers, right? Where we have to be in a place where our emotional tank is full enough that we're more spongy than glass-like so that things can bounce off versus shatter off.
Yeah.
And I guess I just wanted to open a conversation about this. It's like, well, what have you found for you both personally and professionally that helps you kind of fill this emotional capacity tank?
I think, like you said, it's anything with practice. I mean, just you honestly opening up this conversation is bringing tears to me because we have seen things and held space and been with families, like you said, in the worst day of their lives. And that is heavy. And when I am with a family, they have 100% of me. Mm-hmm. I'm not leaving any space for myself because this is what I've signed up for. This is what I want to do. This is my skill level. And this family deserves that. What I don't or didn't do was ever give myself 100% back when I needed to process what had happened. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that got me into a cycle of not giving 100% to families, but deflating so much quicker afterwards. Like I couldn't keep doing it at the rate I was doing it and have it not affect everything else in my life, from, my sex life, my parenting, my friendships, my thoughts of myself. And it really took the pandemic and me getting relocated and working in the NICU and working on an L&D floor where I was really only consulted for deaths and stillbirths and really these hard situations for me to go, wow, I could really use some help right now. And so, you ask what helps. What helps me is it was like for a while, it was like therapy day. And I would like go to this $10 foot spa, get my foot rubbed. I would go see my therapist and then I would go to Trader Joe's. And it was like my day of me. And
Mm-hmm.
that helped. I'm also on medication. I have changed in and out of what has worked for me. And now I was just telling you before we started, I'm on this amazing dose of medication, which is higher than I ever thought I, quote unquote, should or need. And so much guilt, Kara, around me never actually being the family that these things have happened to. Like,
oh my gosh, I would never have thought of that. Yeah.
who am I to be feeling bad about myself and having these feelings when I get to come home and kiss my kid who's healthy?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How dare I? Like, that was the biggest hurdle, that I didn't deserve it. And I still have problems with that. I even feel imposter syndrome when I talk to you. Like, what am I going to talk about? I feel that inadequacy to sit at the table. That gets better with practice and with medication. That tends to go away.
That is so well said.
I don't know. Yeah.
I think it's the combination. I mean, I think coaches' favorite words are
Yeah.
and, right? Like I have this cute little thing behind me, a little symbol of the ampersand,
Oh,
very
cute.
intentionally, because I think it is the and. It's like medication and practice and, a long list of never ending things that can support us. What's so interesting about you having that dialogue of like, why should I feel this, is over here on this side of the table. Sometimes it feels like providers, never child life specialists, but like they don't have that humanity. I would love to know that they see this and they are impacted by it. Not like I want it to ruin their day, right? But that they see this and they think, wow, this is hard. Wow, I see this mom desperately trying to help her child. That looks really hard, right? Like some compassion, some humanity, because I kind of do see that missing these days from some of people that are, I think, probably overworked and underappreciated. But that's so interesting how different vantage points can have such a different.
Yeah, I think it's probably there. They're probably not able to have the time to tap into it. Yeah. I would also say, like, when I'm in that trauma bay, they get to think about medical this and that, like checklists. And I'm like, my job is looking at you, the parent, you, the child. Like, I'm taking pulse on emotions and feelings. And like, that is my space. So it does make sense that it probably affects, I can't speak for all child life specialists, but myself more than the doctor who was actually paying attention to the beats per minute, the respiratory rate. That's where their brain was. Mine was like, what's happening here or there? What do I need to connect? What chair do they need to send? Do they need a tissue? Like, where, like these small things to make sure that you're as present as you want to be and equipped as you need to be. And that is probably more emotionally exhausting. Their brains probably hurt more at the end of the day from all the thinking they had to do. And maybe my heart just hurts a little more.
Well, perhaps their hearts need to start entering the picture a little bit. That's just my personal opinion. I think they need their heart along with their brain. And there's so many amazing providers out there. So
I get it.
I don't mean to make it sound like they're not doing a good enough job, but there's a lot of experiences that we've all had. So,
it would take 30 seconds of human connection for you to get that. And I think that maybe that's your point of getting at. Like, you're not asking for a big grandiose, like, come to my house and make me dinner. You're asking for this eye connection of like, you are mom. This is hard for you. I've got you. I've got your kid, so that you can feel like, okay, there's a human in there. It doesn't take much
to feel like they've got me. They see this and they've got it. Yeah. I think some doctors make us feel that way, and nurses. It feels so great. And sometimes they don't. And I think that's where we're already in a fight and flight kind of stage. And so it's like, we're so sensitive, right? I think in those spaces, and of course we are, but it's tricky. So kind of returning back to this emotional capacity that we're talking about. And for you, you really had to learn what didn't work. And what didn't work was giving yourself no space and no refilling of that tank. And you've learned over time that that doesn't work. And you've learned what does support you. From your perspective, what do you feel like looking at parents and watching parents, like knowing the challenges, the true challenges that they have, as in they're too scared to leave their child's bedside, or a variety of other things that feel very real. What do you see that perhaps they might not see to be able to start filling some of those tanks, even when they are in these circumstances that are very hard?
I think doing the scary thing, even if it is leaving for 30 minutes with support in place, and not that you have to go, but ask for social work to come, ask for her neighbor to come, spend 3 days leading up to this 30-minute time you're going to leave to prepare for these 30 minutes because you desperately need and deserve that to have a clear eye and a clear picture of what's happening. It doesn't serve you to not take any breaks or time for yourself. And that is scary, especially when you are the only one who knows your child best. Have you listened to Raising Disabled, their podcast yet?
I've listened to several of the early episodes. They're new, right?
Yeah.
So I've listened to
they're
a
new to
couple
the
of them.
scene.
Yeah.
Randall talks about, and y'all should go listen to the story. And she talks it on my podcast too, but her child's medical record literally was paper and flew everywhere. Like it was a windy day in West Texas and flew everywhere. And when she got to the next hospital, no paper transported. And she was the only person in the world who knew everything about her child. Like she had to be the complete historian. So
oh my gosh,
it's like honoring that pressure too. But like even she needs that break. That 30 minutes, like it doesn't have to be a lot, but find that partner, that neighbor, these people who are asking, how can I help? And equip them so they can help.
So what I'm hearing is it takes the willingness to ask. It takes also stepping into that discomfort, that little bit of scary, but what's on the other side is essentially the key to our longevity, to key to our balance. And when I say balance, it's like, yes, there's a lot of hard, but also let's not give up on actually having really great lives, even though we really do have hard things. That what's on the other side, I think, is very rich and that it's worth it. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. What do you think? Like, what's your answer to that question?
Well, I think I set you up with a really hard question because I think in those acute moments where, hospitalizations, I do think that really actually empowering survival mode. Yes, I think getting away and taking breaks, of course, but it's going to look a little different in terms of what you do on those breaks during times we'll call of non-survival times. A lot of parents, like they don't necessarily get out of that survival. They have kids that have equipment that could fail at night and their child could not be breathing in the morning, right? So there's like these real things. So I think it takes really stepping outside and creating a support structure, like you're saying, asking the people, recognizing that, yes, they can live with that level of vigilance that they think they need to, but perhaps stepping back, looking at the bigger picture and really asking like, okay, well, what can I create that actually works? Because it doesn't work to stay up all night every night.
Yeah.
In those moments when you're out of survival, it takes really asking some hard questions and allowing ourselves to think beyond, because what happens is people start to think about how before they think about what. So I'll elaborate a little bit. Like they think, okay, well, I can't get a nurse, so I can't sleep at night. But really the what is I need to have some rest. Yeah. And if the what is the thing that we're focusing on, then we recognize there's actually a lot of different hows. Yeah. Some of them we want to do, but some of them we might. So it just kind of cracks open the door of possibility to be able to ask the better question of like, well, what is it that you want to create or need to create in some situations? So I don't know. I think it looks a lot of different ways.
Yeah, I like that, especially when you were talking about coming out of that traumatic space or out of that like fight or flight zone, looking forward. If this were to happen again, what do I set in place to help me get through that? And I think it's the same thing with kids, preparing them. So the next time, if something like this happens, if we have to go to the doctor for another blood draw with your daughter, what worked well last time and what didn't work well? Like, what are we going to build upon so that the next time this comes up, I have a plan in place?
Yeah. And actually I had that exact situation. So Levi's IV is like almost impossible to start. And so he was in an MRI machine. They needed to start contrast. So they were trying to get a vein. They were failing. It was so interesting because even though it was only an MRI, the response that I had in my body felt like it's another time in the hospital where things aren't happening as they should. And it feels really bad. And so in my mind, I was like, well, never again will we be, and we couldn't get him up to move him. Otherwise we'd lose the 30 minutes of scan he already did. So I've learned now I need to advocate that he has the IV before he lays down and to have it in a place and space where we have no time pressure. Because then if they can't get it, that's fine. They didn't get it. Right. Yeah. And so kind of a random story. I don't know how I got on that tangent, but The one thing I'll add here is that, yes, coming home from those acute times, recognizing, okay, wow, I need to do a little post-game recap and figure out what worked and what didn't and what I might need to do differently. But also recognizing that in our, we'll call it maintenance, the things that we witness as parents, the things that we're constantly going through, like it takes a lot of maintenance to actually be able to then show up for my kid. Like for me, it looks like also medication. It looks like doing work in the times that I have carved out for myself to process all of this. It looks like having people on my team, like therapists and coaches that actually can help me, because this is too much for anyone to do alone. It's just a lot.
It is.
Okay. Well, I want to make sure we have some time here to talk about Child Life on Call, because it's an incredible resource. So if you would just talk a little bit about the app and what you're creating it and the vision you have for it. I looked on your website and I was like, you have this whole like parent resource section. I want to make sure people really know about that and what they might find when they go there.
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking. I started Child Life on Call back in 2017. I was working in a small children's hospital and I had this mom going through an experience and she said, please, like, can you tell me someone else who's gone through this before? And I couldn't. And I was about to give birth to my second child, very much listening to other birth stories, feeling so like, I know that's not my exact story, but hearing others makes me feel less alone. And there was one other podcast out there that I had seen, and it was like 1 in a million baby. I don't know if she still does it, but she was wonderful. And she was in Australia. And I was like, I want a repertoire, a library. So the next parent that goes, my kid has to have ear tubes. I want to hear somebody else who's gone through this. My kid needs stitches. My kid has a rare disease. My kid fell and broke their, like whatever experience is coming up, that they have someone else they can listen to and feel less isolated. So that's the whole podcast. And then I just got obsessed with how technology can expand and enhance these services for families. Child Life Specialists started using the podcast as a resource. How can I give Child Life Specialists more access to more resources so that all families benefit? You know, we really talked about at the beginning how Child Life doesn't get to see every family. And that's really a matter of health inequity when it doesn't happen, because one family gets access to this amazing essential service recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics, and another family does not. So what the app does is it doesn't replace Child Life, but it is tools and resources. Like you can make a coping plan. You look up procedures and learn how to advocate for your child. You can get a book list of a certain diagnosis. So all of the things that we've created as Child Life Specialists live in this app, and hospitals provide it to the families who they come in upon admission or even before. And then they get to keep it post-discharge as well. So that's all well and good, the plan, Kara. And so I am, as you know, selling to children's hospitals is really difficult. And Child Life doesn't unlock revenue. You know, we affect the overhead and we have great measurements on KPIs, like how we impact length of stay and patient satisfaction. But it's really hard to sell something like a technology to a hospital. And we're just this little Child Life on Call company. But I have big dreams for us, making the app accessible to all families to be able to download in the App Store. But right now, I don't want families to pay. I want them to get it because it's a service they should be getting from their hospital. So that's my goal for now. We just landed our 4th hospital, which is really exciting. And hopefully we just continue to grow.
Congratulations. I'm so glad to hear that.
Thank you.
And I totally get it. Like selling to an audience that perhaps doesn't have the resources for what you're selling, yet what you're selling has this capacity to really improve their lives. I feel you from a deep level. But what I'm hoping for you and for me is that humanity starts to enter back in, like the full humanity enters back into medicine, because I think you can tell, I think it's kind of starting to miss a little bit. And I think this area in Pacific, like if we really get the impact that this tool has for all the people, it would be a no-brainer. Of course, they would fit into the budget. And this, you know, it would be like, why would we not have this? So you're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Well, I'm not stopping, and neither are you. And that's kind of like what we're just out here doing. We're figuring it out one step in front of the other, and I'm not stopping anytime soon. So we'll figure it out somehow.
We will figure it out. That's one thing. That's one thing. I'm a stubborn little thing.
Same.
I was like, you know what? It's fine. It served me well most of the time.
Yeah.
most of the time. And so tell us a little bit about the parent resources you have on your website.
Yes. So we have some parent resources on our website, like how to help your child take medicine.
Mm-hmm.
I have a few different links on there to forms, and I encourage you to go fill out the form. And it's a great way to educate the care team about your child. So sensory preferences, personality traits, it's completely free. You just fill out the form, it gets to your email, and then you just keep it in safekeeping. So the next time you go, I don't know if you remember, we did one for Levi. We did a little about me back in the day.
I felt so empowered putting it on the PICU door, like, boom, this is Levi. Yeah, I totally remember that.
And this is a little bit more parent driven. It also asks, like, what do you prefer as a parent?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want your child to be in the room during it? How do you learn best? Visuals. And so just kind of equipping you with how to communicate with the care team. Our newest resource, which I guess I kind of do have a launch coming up, how to prepare your child for a vaccine, like a child life specialist.
Mm-hmm.
So we go through all the ages and stages and exactly what to do if your child is getting a shot or vaccine. So that'll be coming out soon for flu season.
It's funny because I think a lot of us parents have multiple kids. And even though one of our children is like, oh, we got this dialed in, perhaps the other child is like, I can't get a shot. Like, this will be the end of me. It's funny because, like, I have 4 kids. So there's a lot of different experiences. And like I said early in our conversation, like, there is so much value that I've had from knowing you that I've been able to then to take to my kids. And it just feels so good to be empowered, to feel like I have this little bit of awareness of what I can ask for and how I can advocate for my child and for myself. Your tools just really help kind of guide parents into that. So we'll have all of the information on how to get to you on the show notes. And as we wrap up, is there anything on your mind that you would like to share as we wrap up?
No, I just love you. And I'm so grateful that I got to do this. And one day we'll meet in real life and we'll hug. And
it's gonna be great.
I can't wait till that day.
Same. I love you so much. And I'll see you in our next conversation.
Yes, can't wait.
See you on the next episode. One more thing before we officially wrap up this show. Sometimes when I'm listening to podcasts, I have the experience of wanting more. I'm listening at the very end thinking, I sure wish that episode didn't end. I invite you, if you feel in any way the same way, I invite you to the Special Needs Mom podcast community, which is a free group that I host on Facebook, where we as a community of fellow moms who listen to this podcast and are experiencing life in similar shoes get to talk to one another, get to share stories, get to actually interact. I hope you'll consider joining. See you over there.